Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Obi-Wan Kenobi parts 1, 2, and 3. Spoilers in the second half, as the title says, which will honestly be most of the video. So, technically a late review for parts 1 and 2. I totally forgot they were doing Wednesdays. I thought when they switched it to Friday, I thought they were actually just switching everything to Friday. So, when it was like Memorial Day and they're like, Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 3 in 2 days, I was very happy about that because I was like, oh, that's actually more amazing than I realized. So I was super happy that we got this newest episode. We are also technically at the halfway point. So in a weird way, it was like, I guess technically I'm doing a review for the first half of the series, which is crazy and unfortunate to say, but I'm still looking forward to it. I think we've already got some really great stuff. So we'll start from episode 1, and of course we'll end with all the Darth Vader stuff. I have my this is from A New Hope special edition when they did like the re-releases of the movies. I'm pretty sure this was my first ever lightsaber because I don't think I ever had Luke's or anything like that from the original trilogy or even even the special edition. So I'm pretty sure this is actually my very first ever lightsaber, and it's a great first one. Obviously, no more saber part, but I would assume it works if I could get the batteries out. But they exploded, and then they're really hard to get out of the bottom. So it might work in the future if I take the time to get those. I need like a really strong magnet because I think the acid just has it locked in tight. But hasn't blown up or anything, and it's I've had this thing for like 20 years. I'm sure I broke it 20 plus years ago. But yeah, I got that in my old Darth Vader from like, I would assume, I guess, the special edition set of toys coming out. So got those two things. But we'll get to all things Darth Vader at the end, which was absolutely amazing. But starting from episode 1, even though parts 1 and 2 came out together, episode 1 was fun. It was fun in a dark way. It was really cool to see Obi-Wan in like this super new way where it's like, oh wow, this is him. This is what it's like. It's 10 years later, and so he's been watching Luke for a minute. He's been hiding away for a while, and he's used to being on Tatooine. Like, he takes his his bus ride out to work, slices off an extra little piece of meat, rides the train or bus back to the town, gets on his horse, and then he takes off, and he sleeps in the cave all night, and that's about it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to show that off, show his character and the progression and the lapse that he's taken as far as being like a force with like the great Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I love the way it was handled. And just in the first episode alone, I thought they did a great job and them kind of tackling him, especially with the other Jedi coming into town. Tackling him, separating himself from the Force, which is one of the things that this show does that I really love because that's something we don't see. The other thing being Reva. It was so good. I was like, this is cool. Like, it's someone who hasn't used the Force in a long time. Like, he's disconnected. He's buried his lightsaber, in the sand in the desert. And I was like, this is super cool. And of course, the other Jedi unfortunately does die. That's what you always expect. But the way they handled it with the Inquisitors coming in, we got the Grand Inquisitor. Of course, he doesn't look like he did in Rebels at all. And a lot of people are doing the comparison now with Jedi Survivor trailer coming out, and it's like, oh, like all the versions of that species we've had, and it's like, this one doesn't really look the best, but it is what it is. He probably won't be showing up again anyway because they stabbed him. I'm wondering how they're gonna do that because for anyone who doesn't watch Star Wars Rebels, the Grand Inquisitor is like the main villain of the first season. I highly recommend watching that because they do some stuff. You might find a couple characters from this show that you see in Star Wars Rebels. I'll just say that. I highly recommend Star Wars Rebels and of course Clone Wars. If you have not been watching it, you're really missing out. Like, there's so much more detail you're missing with the Anakin Obi-Wan stuff. It's so good. Ahsoka was born there. It's like, if you haven't seen Clone Wars, you're missing out on life. Just saying. But anyway, getting into it. Love what they did with that, with him being disconnected from the Force. I like the idea of him kind of doing his thing. Like, he's like, I have to protect the boy, and that's pretty much it. It's like, oh man, here come the Inquisitors. Reva's off the chain and stuff. Like, they use her actual name for one, so that shows how little much they respect her because that's like a whole thing. It's like, you are this brother or this numbered sister. And I was like, oh, they just call her by her name. That never happens. That's just not a thing. So I thought that was super cool. I was like, all right, that's another element that, obviously for people that are nerdy about it or extra nerdy about it, it's like, oh, that's different because that's not what they do. That's like, that kind of defies what that sort of uniformity that they have. And it's just like, that's how much they hate her. It's just like, we'll just call you by your name. Like, that's how disrespectful they are. And it's an interesting way to look at it. So I like how crazy she is. I'm gonna, iffy on some other stuff. I hate her parkour, which we're there now. We might as well talk about it. I'm totally fine with her. Episode 1. I love the scene where she chops the lady's hand off, though. I was like, wow, that was like, it honestly kind of caught me off guard because I was like, that's super effed up. And then it's ultimately like, hey, calm down. But it's not like they care that much. It's like, oh, well, I guess she lost her hand. It's like, they're hunting Jedi. They don't care that much, but it was kind of just like, hey, we're not trying to kill everybody. But, well, her hand's gone. But the parkour, there were two scenes, let's face it. Both sequences involving chases, so far the worst two scenes in the entire series, as far as I'm concerned. So, episode 1, really good, it's super cool. Holy crap, Leia, it's unbelievable, I couldn't believe it. So, all that's really cool. And then we get to episode 2. I guess technically that was episode 1. Honestly, I watched them back to back, so I genuinely can't remember where episode 1 actually ends. But I think maybe it was, I guess it was the end. Yeah, the end of episode 1 is when he leaves. So we find that out in episode 1. So I guess each episode has had a horrible moment. But the chase sequence with Leia, so bad. Like, they couldn't just put more trees just on the ground and she's crawling more or something, because, like, her, like, dodging like a ninja, it doesn't work. The scene, and I wasn't the only person that caught it, the scene where she goes under a branch, I'm like, okay, that's not that high. Like, you can just, if you're chasing her, you could just go boom and you go under it. And they just had the actress just run into it and you just boom and just hits it. I'm like, you clearly just ran right into it. Like, you didn't even try to duck. You were running for like 5 feet. I saw you from back there running up to this branch that is clearly at your chest. You could just boom right under. And they're like, yeah, just run straight into it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why did they do that for that chase sequence? That was really bad. It was unfortunate. It's like, that's definitely like the worst scene so far. Fortunately, number 2 was another chase sequence. So I was like, the stationary part with Obi-Wan like shooting across buildings, that was super cool. Loving Wild West Obi-Wan is actually pretty sweet. He's good with the guns, despite it being so uncivilized. He's pretty great at it. Which I guess is just force accuracy, whatever. But Reva chasing them down, or not really chasing him, but running to get to where he was at, wasn't the biggest fan. Love parkour. District B13, highly recommend it. I didn't need that though. It was just like, it seemed pointless. It was just like, oh, this doesn't look, it didn't even look interesting. I think that was another big part. It was like, I know she's going in a straight line, except for like the one part where they do like a top down view and she basically like corners off of a wall, so she hits it to get around something. But other than that, she was kind of just going in a straight line, and it was like she could just run and just jump forward and just do it like the Matrix, just do like the stretching out, and that was perfect. But she had to do like front flips and stuff, and I was like, she's not getting anywhere any faster. In fact, it's technically slower, but it was worse because it didn't actually look cool. I'm like, I know she's going in a straight line. I'm pretty sure they were implying that she was using the Force to like super jump as well, because I'm pretty sure they had the sound effects in there. But, all the music and stuff, it could have been a part of the music, but it felt like the way they were emphasizing it was like she's using the Force to kind of like leap across these buildings, even though it wasn't like, like the Matrix where it's super far, but it was like, okay, it's like it's slightly enhanced. So that element of it was cool, but visually I was just like, I just don't like any of this at all. The shootout part was better, and she didn't even make it there. So it was just like, oh, okay. Kumail Nanjiani was in the second episode as a fake Jedi. It was all right. I would have preferred if it was a more serious role where he actually was a different Jedi and he just like gets killed off or something. But it was like, okay, so he's funny, like he is, and he's the comic relief. And it was like, okay, it would have been cool. It would have been much cooler, obviously, if he was the comic relief, but was actually a Jedi. That would have been sick. But it was just like, okay, he's a dude pretending to be a Jedi, and that's about it, which is super, super duper dangerous. But obviously, he does a bunch of illegal stuff anyway. So I was like, all right, it was fine. It was funny enough, and we have our whole chase sequence, all that, the shootout. Flea is in it, so Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers is officially in 2 of my top 5 franchises of all time, because he was in Back to the Future, for anyone who didn't know that, and now he's officially in Star Wars, so that was super cool. But they have their moment. Leia escapes with Obi-Wan. When he taps into the Force, that was really cool, because that was another part that I loved as far as him being detached from the Force and stuff like that. That was great. He got down that building super quick, but we'll count that as Jedi stuff. So they go through the whole chase sequence, everything's fine. They get to the end of episode 2, and Obi-Wan finds out that Anakin is alive. He is Darth Vader. He's like the new big bad. Great ending sequence where it's just him staring at the camera and it's just like, Anakin. Depressing, but it was an amazing end. So absolutely love that. Episodes 1 and 2, I was definitely a fan from those 2 episodes. I didn't mind Reva that much. I say I like her more than I don't like her. I feel like it's definitely a bit extra hammy, but I feel like that's kind of the point of her character. She's meant to be over the top, and then once we get her answer, which a lot of people speculated that that's her in that opening sequence, which I totally forgot about, the first actual scene and the recap. The recap was insanely amazing, and then the first actual scene is yet another Order 66. That was crazy. I could not believe it. But a lot of speculation is that she is the very first girl, because it's a young black girl. She has like the single braid. So a lot of speculation is that that's actually her. And why she's specifically mad at Obi-Wan. A lot of people think maybe it's from the elements from the movie where like he and Yoda kind of go to the temple and then they kind of just bounce. Like as far as we know, they didn't look for anybody. They kind of went, gave the message like, "Hey, look out," and then they took off, and that was it. So she could be real mad, like, "Oh, like dang, I was under this rubble and you just left." And then who knows? Maybe she knows Anakin because she was picked up during Order 66. That would be very interesting. And they had to start at some point. So that could be like, well, I think the comics have the technical origin, but they like to retcon stuff. Once it hits live action, sometimes you just gotta be like, it's sadly gone now. But maybe they'll change some stuff. Hopefully they won't though. But love the Order 66 scene. And then, episodes 1 and 2, really fun. And then episode 3 hit. And it was like, okay. He was reeling from finding out that Anakin's alive. They have the great moment, skipping a bunch of stuff. They get to the planet. Amazing moment with the stormtroopers where he's telling the story and he calls her Leia, of course. And they're like, hold on, you said her name was something else. And so he's like, oh, that's her mom's name. Or that's her mom's name. And then he's looking at her and it's like, when I look at her, I see her face. And I was like, oh, that's super sad. And of course, Leia realized that. Of course, she thought that made him her real father. It was like, you knew my actual mom. I was like, that's a really cool moment. Another little bit of the force sensitivity stuff with Leia, so I thought that was cool. That's kind of her thing so far as like it's almost like being an empath a little bit, like you can sense stuff. So I enjoyed that, and then of course I enjoyed the action sequence. And I was waiting. I was surprised, honestly. I was like, okay, they keep adding stormtroopers. Is he gonna keep shooting everybody? And then he gets captured. But either way, we'll get to the lightsaber when we get to it. Really love the action sequence, and once again, he's an amazing shot. So I loved all the action there, and that was really cool. I love that he also shot the laser grid, and then they did that overhead shot, and it was like, obviously they just built like a little post, and they could have just ran around the building. But I understood like why they didn't do that, because that would just been that's not a TV thing. Like that's a real life thing where it's like, we'll just go around, F it. But in a movie, it's got to be dramatic, and it's like they could have just went around, but then it technically saved time if you just shot it and they went straight forward. So I was like, for video purposes, that makes more sense. But real life, we'll just be like, what does it matter? We'll just walk around. It's not that big of a deal. Love the fact that a stormtrooper fell and then he got split in half. That was crazy. Thought they were going to do the Wilhelm scream. I thought it was going to be in there, but it wasn't. I was like, oh, that was like the perfect spot, because I thought it was the start, and then it was the guy's actual scream. And I was like, oh, I thought we were getting a Wilhelm scream, but sadly no. But he did get split in half, and that was pretty crazy. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, okay, that was intense. And I thought that was it. I thought that was the intensity. I was like, oh man, that's kind of intense. He like chopped a dude in half. He didn't I just out of nowhere scene where he gets chopped in half. And then it's like, no, that's not it. And then we have an amazing moment where Obi-Wan gets to like the little bunker where a bunch of Jedi have been. Quinlan Vos gets a reference. So that was interesting. New canon, I guess. Quinlan Vos, maybe. Slight possibility. I highly doubt it. Definitely not in the next 3 episodes. But Asajj Ventress, perhaps. Maybe. There's some potential there. I'm just saying. That would be really cool. Totally would fit into a Ahsoka show. Definitely. So, we'll see what happens there. But I thought that was interesting. Quinlan Vos gets a reference. So that was super cool. And then, the most amazing thing ever. So, we got Vader throughout, like, episode 3. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was simple. I was hyped up when he just came out and he just stepped down the stairs. I was good. I was like, oh, they're gonna do it episode like 5 or something. 5 and 6. That's where we'll get like Vader v Obi-Wan. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh man, he's walking. We hear the voice. It's James Earl Jones, and he's talking and he's mad. And it's like, oh, it's cool. It's like a younger version. It's technically the youngest version of Vader we've seen, live action. Well, I guess that's not true, because technically speaking, he was Vader literally at the end of episode 3. But as far as actually doing something other than screaming no as he just became Darth Vader, this is the second youngest we've had Darth Vader live action. And it was cool. I was like, he's on Mustafar. This is pretty neat. He's walking around. He's looking out his window at volcanic eruptions and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's Darth Vader. First full introduction, lights, breathing, all that. red lenses. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. And then the episode kept going, and I was like, he's kind of sensing him a lot. He's having these hallucinations. Like, did Darth Vader like get up and leave, or like what? And I was thinking, I was just like, oh, Hayden Christensen, he has PTSD, is what I was thinking. It's like, oh, he sees him like in the distance, and it was just like, well, that's interesting. Like, oh, he said, he Obi-Wan starts feeling bad at the end, and I was like, oh, he sensed the, none of these. I thought it was because he was reconnected to the Force. He felt like the dark energy off of the Inquisitors when they came in. And I was like, oh, he feels like the dark presence of the Sith now, or I'm just gonna go Sith just to keep it simple. Like, he feels their dark presence because he wasn't tapped into the Force. That's actually why at the end of episode 2, Reva could feel him, but she didn't know that he was there in episode 1 because he had been detached from the Force for like 10 years. So she couldn't even sense him when she was like doing the whole thing against Owen. Of course, sick burn, but that's been memed so much I didn't even think to mention it. But it was like, I thought that was really cool. So at the end of episode 2, for anyone who may have thought about that, she didn't know that he was there, but she sensed him at the end where she's like, I feel you or whatever. It was because he'd used the Force to save Leia, and before that, he hadn't done it at all in 10 years. So he was basically like you couldn't sense him. He wasn't there. So that's what I was thinking, like I said in my head. He got like the dark presence of, the Inquisitors coming into town and harassing people and stuff. And it was just like, oh, like I haven't felt like that dark presence in a minute. And then the scene just kept going. And then it's like footsteps are happening. And I'm like, there's no effing way. Darth Vader is like in the episode. And he's walking through town. And at first it was like, this is crazy. I thought it was just super, like I said, we saw him doing his thing. He got out of the back of the tank. He's looking outside at lava. I was good. Episode 5, I'll see you when I see you. But him showing up at the end of this episode, and he's walking, and he's got like a slight horror element, which definitely fits Darth Vader. But it was crazy. I was like, it's the lights, it's the walk, he's breathing and stuff. And he comes down and he's like, he knows Obi-Wan Kenobi's there. And it's like, he can sense him, but he can't sense him, perfectly. And so then he does it has to be, I'm not caught up on the comic. I haven't even read the comics. I know I need to read that Vader comic. But as far as I know, because I haven't read the comics, that was probably the sickest, like, Force choke ever. And just because of how disrespectful it was. Not, it was like the coolest thing, like he sucked the dude out of a window and like he threw a ship or something crazy. I'm sure there are much cooler ones, but maybe it's the most disrespectful, and that's what it is. Because he stops, and it's like, I know Obi-Wan's here somewhere. What if I just start hurting people? It was legit like Wild West type stuff. And he force chokes a dude, and I thought it was like, oh man, he sees him through the window, force choke. And then he brings him out of the window, and his feet are just like dragging on the like windowsill, and I'm like, that's so effed up. Like, you're already force choking this dude, and then it's just like, no, I want to look at you in the face, and he just pulls him through an open window, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is violent. And then lady's just trying to help somebody she cares about. She comes out, and Vader's like, oh, okay, I'm done with him. Puts her up against the wall. Boom, snaps her neck. And I was just like, Darth Vader just force snapped a neck. That's ridiculous. And then he just walks down the street. This lady is minding her business. And he was just like, boom. And just drags her on the ground. And I assume she died. I couldn't tell because I thought he was just choking her. And then they have it where like the people are checking on each other. And the guy's like checking on her. And she's just like laid out. So I'm like, did he kill her? I thought he was just like dragging her along and like kind of force choking her. And then he just let her go. But I guess she's dead. Maybe the guy on the ground died too. I couldn't tell 100%, honestly. But that lady was minding her business. And he just was like, oh, I forgot. And just grabbed her from the background and just dragged her on the ground. And I was like, that is so rude. And then it still got better than that, because that was already just insane. We actually see Darth Vader light up his lightsaber. And for a minute I was worried. And then I realized I had like 15 minutes left in the episode, so I was actually real hyped. He pulls out his lightsaber. I thought it was gonna every epic moment, because I didn't want to check the time. Every like amazing little sequence, I thought it was gonna do like just the long hold and then the episode would cut. But they didn't do it. Everything I wanted was there. And we're probably gonna get a second fight, I would assume. So it was just crazy. Like, he comes up on him, ignites the red, and it's just sick. And of course it's nighttime, so when they hit the lightsabers, everything around it glows, and that was an amazing choice. Especially after he lets it go, like Obi-Wan kind of takes off, and then it was just like, okay, I'll just follow you. Just classic supervillain move. I'll just follow you. Horror movie villain, really. I'll just follow you. No big deal. And then he scares him. And he's just like, you can't run. And he just strikes the lightsaber. I was like, that's not what I thought. Like, I thought it was going to be like showdown time. Lightsabers ignite. And it was just out of absolute terror. And it was just like, whoa. And it was crazy. And he just struck his lightsaber and boom. Obi-Wan has now officially reignited his lightsaber for the first time in 10 years. And that's wild. I feel like, I don't know how, maybe it's just the moment, because I guess it's been such a long time since we've seen Obi-Wan do it. It has been like 10 years. So maybe that's why. Like, it actually fits the 10 years where it's just like, we haven't seen Obi-Wan Kenobi strike up a lightsaber. Obviously, watch the movies, but nothing new in a very long time. I don't remember, when episode 3 came out, but it's over 10 years, because I think that was 2008. So that's crazy. But he strikes it up. It's a great like horror sequence where it's just blue, and like I kept expecting him to move the lightsaber and like the camera would actually like focus and the colors would shift, and then Vader would just be right there. I was honestly waiting for him to just be like inside of the blue and like fade into the scene, which he kind of does. It's just not like a close up like I was thinking. But he just walks in like I guess the dust is not really the smoke, but just out of the dust, and it's like you just see the lights in the lightsaber, and it was so good. And Obi-Wan is just like trying to defend himself, and we see like the classic Vader like just simple strikes where it's just like boom, like he does a bit more spinning, but it was just like boom boom, like I'm just doing like big swings and just knocking him back, and Obi-Wan can't do anything, like he's just out of it, like he's just weak, and he's like barely defending himself, and it just looks so good. And Vader even uses the Force, which is really cool, and just sent them flying. And I was like, man, this is wild. And he's just chasing him down, he's taunting him and stuff, and I'm like, oh, he's like, he could have easily, clearly he could have easily killed him, but this is still like a younger Vader, and these are, this isn't just like some random Jedi that doesn't mean crap. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is the man who made him what he is. So the emotions there were so good, and it's just like, wow, you don't see Vader like that, because this is a very unique moment in time, and it was amazing. And then it kept going, and it seems like Vader has officially won. He hits him with the Force choke, because I was waiting for him to do it. I'm like, he has to Force choke Obi-Wan Kenobi. Crazy. He did it. So he's holding him up. Obi-Wan ends up dropping the lightsaber. I'm like, okay, what's happening? Because he blew up this random thing, and I'm like, okay, like it's weird. It was like it was just gonna cut. And I was expecting it to just end like on this weird suspenseful moment. So I'm like, okay, he's just holding him. What did he blow that thing up for? And then he like slowly dips down, which is something you never see Vader do. And he slowly dips, and it's just like, boop, right, just the tip on the crystal, and it's just like, oh, he made it like a fire. Like, oh, that's interesting. And then it's like, it took like half a second to register, like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it's like, wow, that's petty. And I loved every single second of it. And then it got even crazier than that, and he actually just dumps him in the fire. I thought he was gonna get hit before that, and like, the woman would come back and save him before he even got hurt. But he was in the fire. He was like, now you'll burn. Like, here we go. And he had him dead to rights. There was nothing. If that woman did not turn around, if Leia wasn't like, hey, I got this, he would have been screwed. And there were, honestly, I had like Force Unleashed flashbacks, which now I think I understand a tweet that I saw where someone was like, I wonder how Sam Witwer feels about Starkiller after this episode. Because I was definitely getting like Force Unleashed vibes where I was like, holy crap, they're about to arrest Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's going to be captured at the end of the third episode. Like, where do you even go from there? That's what I was thinking. Sadly, that's what I thought when Force Unleashed 2 happened, and we got nothing. Bring back Starkiller, please. I know they can do it. Like, I already thought that they could have it during Rebels. It's easy. It's honestly really easy. The game could still go right in there. I'm just saying. But it was great. Like, he was in the fire. The Stormtroopers show up. I'm like, what can she do here? Honestly, for half a second, even when she showed up, I honestly thought, especially after he, like, stopped the fire and he was, like, basically his suffering had just begun. I was like, okay, even with her being there, with it being Darth Vader, I genuinely was like, what if she shot the Stormtrooper and he instantly knew where she was at and he just like yanked her off the cliff? Like, I honestly, he's so powerful. I was like, he could just be like, oh, and just pull her off the cliff and kill her. I genuinely didn't know. I was like, they could do it where he could just blow up wherever she's at with the Force, and it wouldn't have been surprising. It would have been insane. But I'm like, I could see it happening. It didn't, for Obi-Wan's sake. And so they make the great escape. I love that droid that they have in this episode. He was about to beat the F out of that Stormtrooper. I love that sequence. But It's crazy. That was an insane ending, and it's just like I don't know what to expect next. Like they obviously rescue Obi-Wan at the end, but he's injured, and then Leia ends up being captured by Reva or Reva. I guess I've been saying Reva this whole time, but Reva. Um, I'm curious where that's gonna go because technically, obviously Vader is there. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because I was gonna say like, are they gonna do like that weird connection between obviously Anakin Skywalker and Leia? And it was like, oh, I guess they wouldn't need to because in A New Hope they're up on each other like nobody's business, and it's like they don't. That force connection isn't really there because she's not sensitive enough. She's just, the princess. So I guess it wouldn't matter if they could actually have a moment where she sees her dad as a kid. I hadn't even thought of that, but I also didn't think Leia was going to be in it. So we might have that next week. We might actually get to see Darth Vader talk to his own daughter as a kid. I mean, it's not as special because obviously he technically talks to her like throughout the first movie, and he doesn't even know that that's his daughter until Return of the Jedi. Spoilers, but obviously. So I guess they could have that scene. That would be really interesting, just to see how they do that. Maybe she would sense something, and they kind of show that moment where she senses it like a tiny bit as a kid. Maybe Obi-Wan would be close enough, and get some connecting the dots there through the Force. But I'm looking forward to the next episode. I don't know what we should expect. It's hard to say what we should expect at this point. Which once again, I think Leia's gonna be in the aside from the surprise of Leia, I think she's gonna be throughout the whole series. I figured maybe the next episode he probably would have got to safety and then it would have been done, and then have like the last two. But now that she's been captured, I mean technically he could rescue her in the very next episode. I just highly doubt it. So I think Leia is literally going to be like one of the main characters. I think she's going to be in every episode. Like I honestly hadn't considered that. I thought it would really be like 2 episodes with her, or 3 I guess, and then it would be off to like the second half of the story. But she is in there, so I thought that was cool. It was something I realized by the end. I was like, oh well, if this is how it's going, she's just there to the ending is going to be him putting her back on Alderaan and be like, all right, off to the desert again. So that'll be interesting, unless we get some crazy twist, another season. But loved every minute of it. This last episode was utterly insane, but it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see what they do next. I do hope we get another fight, because it could just be that was the one time that they see each other. But I'm like, no, we gotta have a second fight. Like there definitely has to be one where it was like Obi-Wan clearly lost, and then he builds himself back up, but then he has to basically go back into hiding. There's also a lot of stories from comics that they could utilize. Technically, he's got like another 10 years, I think, as far as Luke is concerned. Going into A New Hope, they could do some more stuff if they wanted to. So maybe he builds himself back up by the end of this. They have another fight. He technically wins that one or whatever, but Vader ends up going off, and then Obi-Wan stays like in his prime a little bit, until A New Hope rolls around. So we'll see what happens. But we're halfway through, which is sad, but also really cool considering all the epic stuff we got. I'm looking forward to the next 3 episodes. I don't know what to expect from this. I don't know. I'm just excited. I'm hoping that we get Reva's backstory in the next episode, because it would make sense if they're doing like the calm of the chase, where it's Obi-Wan building himself back up. I guess it'll be the next episode, and then Leia figuring out who the villains are. Next week might be the perfect episode to like officially get her backstory. I hope we get it, because that leaves like the last 2 to just be like, okay, now we have like, that's like the one big mystery. Like, why does she hate him so much, and how does she know that Vader is Anakin? Like, that's like a big thing in the comics. Like 3 people know his actual name. Anyone else is like, they gotta go. So we might get another flashback. We might get to see Vader, technically Vader, pre-Vader costume. So that would be cool. They already did a flashback. They already did Order 66. They could just do another scene during that night, and that would be wild. But with the speculation of her being that first little girl we see in the opening of the first episode, we might get to see it. I doubt we'll be seeing him killing younglings or anything like that, but I think we're gonna see more of the Jedi Temple during Order 66. We might get two Order 66 moments in one thing, and that would be the first time we've ever had that. So we might get another one. I feel like we have to. It just makes sense. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. I grabbed the wrong remote because I'm high. This is the one for my camera. Been watching Attack of the Clones this whole time, by the way. They've already kissed, I think, or something. They already ate. They're gonna bang. It doesn't matter. Um, really enjoying the show so far. We'll love to know your thoughts on it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. What was the deal with those freaking chases? I don't understand. They're just crazy. Parkour wasn't good. Leia's chase is just ridiculous. What was that? They could do better. Other than that, absolutely loving the show. Would love to know what you guys think about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. I would love to know your speculations. There's obviously a million things to speculate who may or may not show up. Will the Grand Inquisitor reappear? I feel like he has to, just for people that might end up watching Rebels at some point. They have to kind of fill that gap, which they could easily do in comics, but it just makes sense to do it in the show to be like, he's not actually dead, because otherwise that's just going to be weird. But we'll love to know your speculations and hopes, crazy theories. This is 10 years. I don't think Cal Kestis show. I won't even bother. The new game's coming out. I think after the second game, we might see Cal Kestis live action. Could be wrong, but I think it'll be after the second game. We'll see him show up somewhere live action. They might do an older version. We'll see what happens. But thanks for checking this out. Please put your comments down in the comment section below.